How you doing, everybody? It's Monday the 24th of May 2010 and it's late on in the afternoon and it's a glorious day outside here in Ireland. It's about 26 or 27 degrees, there's hardly a breeze and it's just one of those wonderful days to be alive. And if you're stuck somewhere like a hospital or the pokey or somewhere like that, my heart goes out to you, and hopefully the circumstances will change for you, because days like this, it just lifts your spirits to be outside, walking among the flowers in the garden and things like that. It's glorious, absolutely glorious. I did my last posting at the beginning of last week, and I've actually been deeply engrossed in thinking about all sorts of shenanigans and nonsense. But really the major thing was I wanted to try and go back as far as I could to fundamentals about the present situation that we find ourselves in. And the way that I see it is that nearly all of the Western countries, they have a common problem, and the common problem is debt, and it's the levels of debt that they have. Most of them have colossal and what would seem to be insurmountable levels of debt. They don't. I can't see them resolving this debt mountain that they have. And there's loads of questions that you can ask. You can ask, was it by accident? Obviously not. It's by design. How was it caused? And all that. But at the end of the day, there is a question, and certainly in Ireland anyway, I don't see people asking this question. And what this reminds me of is, say this morning you woke up and a big brown envelope appeared in your door, and inside it said, it was addressed to me, JB Yates, and it said, dear JB, you now owe us 30,000 euros, and your wife owes us 30,000 euros, and all your children owe us 30,000 euros each, and we want paid ASAP. And if you can't pay us now, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put it on the long arm, and you're going to have to pay it to us over the next 30 or 50 years. But somehow or other, we want paid, and we're going to be paid for this. End of story. And if you don't, we'll make things very, very nasty for you. We'll turn ugly, and things will get very, very nasty for you. Very quick. Okay, and that's the thing. So what happened is, you had a look at this because it was an extraordinary letter, because you didn't know who it was from. It was an anonymous letter. There was no title across the top. You know, if you get a demand from a bank, or you get a demand from a building society, or you get a demand from a company that you've borrowed money from, it comes on properly printed notepaper saying, we, the above, demand this from you. Do you understand? But this has not happened here. What has happened is, it's like a fait accompli has been served. It's like force majeure stuff. A gun has been put to your head. But you don't know who's putting the gun to your head. You don't know who you owe this money to. I'll give you an example. A simple example. Well, I'll give you two examples, and then you can see where I'm coming from. The first one's NAMA. We had a toxic bank called NAMA, and what happened is we had to borrow, in order to bail our banks out, we had to bail them out to the tune of 80 billion. So in other words, we had to actively get somehow or other the equivalency of 80 billion of their debts resolved, and we did that by borrowing 54 billion from the European Central Bank in bonds. Okay, and by a complex whole structure through this toxic bank, we give the bonds to these various banks in Ireland, and they're able to redeem the bonds for cash at the European Central Bank. Alright, and we have done that in our name, the name of us, all the citizens who live in Ireland, and our children and our grandchildren into the future. Okay, it has to be paid for. So it's 54 billion that somehow or other has to be paid back at interest rates at the minute of about, whatever it is, a couple of %, back to the European Central Bank. Okay, whatever the bond rate is, it'll be whatever the bond is, or the interbank rate is, it'll be a couple of %, right? That's at the moment, but what actually happens when interest rates go up is another matter. Now, so that's the first case, all right. So I have been told, you see, you can't read this anywhere. Nobody tells you this, but I have this on good authority from at least 2 economists who work within the state and have seen papers relating to this, that this 54 billion of debt refers to less than 300 people. Now, I want to know who those 300 people are. I know who the top 10 are, and I know that by accident, because they've all basically gone to the wall or have jumped ship and are in hiding. But I want to know who those other 290 people are. I want to know who they are. I want to know who I owe this money to as a citizen of this republic. That's number one. Then we ramp it up, and we find ourselves with this chart. And there obviously is a bigger version of this chart, because this is the chart for what Ireland, you can see it here, these are the 5 pig countries, what they owe one another and what they owe to Europe. And Ireland's in there. And you can see at the top there, that's Greece, they owe the smallest amount. And then the next biggest amount is Portugal down here. And lo and behold, Ireland owes 3 times what Greece owes. Greece owes in total 236 billion. Ireland owes 687 billion. And then there's only 2 countries above us, and these are gigantic countries. These are massive industrial countries. One is Spain and the other is Italy. And Spain owes 1.1 trillion. Owes about 1 almost twice. No, it doesn't owe twice. 1.5 times what Ireland owes. And Italy owes about twice what Ireland owes. Okay. Now, there's a bigger, that's internally in Europe. That's what we owe internally. So Ireland owes 867 billion inside Europe. That's what our banks and financial institutions owe. Okay? And we have underwritten that. We've underwritten that. So I want to know, who do we owe that money to inside Europe? Now, I know we've already found out after emailing people and writing to people and ringing people up, we've already found out, as if by accident, we owe 200, I think it's in 24 billion of it, to Landesbanks in Germany. But who is the rest owed to? And then we come to the big one, which is the Central Statistics Office figure of what our total indebtedness is as Ireland Inc. And we owe 1.7 trillion. And I want to know, who do we owe that money to? Now, the reason I'm going on about this is very, very simple. We don't owe it to Joe round the corner in Coronation Street. We don't owe it to Albert in Emmerdale Farm. We owe that money, it's very, very simple, we owe that money to the top 10%. Because they already owe 83% of the wealth of the world. And as sure as shooting, they own 83% of the debt of the world. So 83% of what you are indebted is owed to them. Because none of this is rocket science, contrary to what you might have been taught or what you might think. This is all really, really very simple. This has all been planned. It's all been well thought out. And the moment that it all goes, whoa, the boys who have all the money will be in there and they'll be doing like chess pieces. They'll have all the best pieces. Just like old Joe Kennedy and Jack Morgan did in 1929. They split up America between them effectively. They were the 2 key financiers in America, and they ended up effectively cherry picking the whole of America in 1929-30. So that's what's going to happen today. But I just pose a simple question. You tell me, as JB Yates, that I owe this amount of money, who do I owe it to? Who do we as the Irish people owe it to? Who do we owe it to? Is that too much to ask? Seems like it is. I'm going to talk more.